Hello, welcome. I'm Kelley Mountain with Goddess.modern. I'm going to be speaking today on the topic of how to reestablish a deep connection of intimacy after there's been a long strain of the quality of intimacy in a partnership. This is something that I think partners, couples, beloveds, I think will encounter many times on the journey of a long-term partnership. There's so many factors that influence the quality of intimacy in a partnership, and so the topic of intimacy, I think, in order to be successful, needs to be adaptable, flexible, fluid. It needs to be met with true authenticity and vulnerability, which requires honesty. It requires clarity of one's needs and desires. And the topic will likely need a check-in every once in a while. And in fact, I think in order to support really healthy, sustainable, long-term intimacy, I think it's important to have check-ins, and even to do so, even to have check-ins when things are feeling great and supported and clear and comfortable and are just coasting on a really nice quality of energy together. It's great to have check-ins even in those times, you know. It's like, why wait until there's a conflict? Typically, if a conflict arises, the communications are going to be more delicate at that time than any other time. And if check-ins happen along the way outside of times of conflict, then it'll most likely support the connection so that those times of conflict don't really need to come up in order to be a force of awakening and renewal and clarity and learning. If check-ins happen along the way while things are feeling good, then it lessens the need for those conflicts to come up that really push us, really force us into these processes and modes of connection with ourselves and each other. And all of it's good. There's no necessarily good or bad or right and wrong way. It's just for me, I like to really keep things as simple as possible and just keep things in the realm of looking at all as just a journey of self-discovery together, within the self and within connection to each other. So intimacy is a layered topic because there's different types of intimacy. There's what we all would agree is are very clear levels of intimacy. Like there's physical, there's emotional, there's sexual intimacy. There's other aspects of intimacy that are sometimes not as familiar in our culture, around sensual intimacy, around energetic intimacy. I have a blog piece that I wrote. It's on my website. It's called The Anatomy of Intimacy, that speaks to this point really well. And I liken intimacy to a flower, where, as I say, the outer petals are these, it moves from these energetic layers of intimacy to the sensual and physical, and then in the center of the flower, the very center, is the sexual. And how our culture tends to focus on the sexual and the physical, and often tends to not focus so much on the emotional and the sensual and the energetic. And how, especially for women, these outer petals are extremely important to acknowledge and nurture, and above all, enjoy. And I think it's important for men too, although I also do think that men and women typically do tend to experience our qualities of intimacy and experiences of intimacy, our needs for intimacy in subtly different ways, because I think our biology actually plays some part in that. But I think ultimately everybody has generally the same needs for these different layers of intimacy, whether they're focused on it or not. And I know for women, especially it's like the whole flower is really important to tend to. So okay, how do we bring intimacy into a connection that has been strained over some time? How do you bring it back? And what I would say is just come back to the basics. So for a woman, it's really hard. Typically, it's hard for a woman to feel really good about sharing her self intimately, sexually, if she feels like her heart is not being taken care of, if she feels like the energetics are not being tended to, then it can lead to a situation where physically it's hard for her to really open up and really bring like her full juiciness to the experience, because there's a part of herself that feels ignored and not tended to, not supported, not cared for by her partner. So in order for a woman to be able to really tap back into that and then bring that to an experience with her partner, I typically suggest to simplify and go back to the basics. Like, think about the qualities of intimacy that you shared with your partner at the beginning stages of dating, like before you had sex. It's like, think about those ways that you connected that felt really good. I'd say generally those ways that were getting really met at those times were emotional and maybe some physical connection, that maybe there was more time spent like holding each other, holding and petting and massaging, and I think there's more time spent at the beginning of a connection where people are really like very openly sharing what's on their heart and about their journey and their needs and their desires, and just having really deep, thoughtful, meaningful check-ins and communications about like how are people, where are people at, and how are they feeling, and what are their dreams and what are their visions and how can they be supported. And I think coming back to these types of intimacy, especially for a woman, are really important, because when she feels met in these ways, then it helps her to feel really cared for in her heart, really tended to and nourished and well supported in her heart, which then helps her vagina, helps her flower, her yoni temple, helps it feel more open and ready to receive her partner in a sexual way. It helps her to her body to produce like the juice that makes the sexual sharing really really deeply felt and connected and nourishing for each person involved. So I would say that my suggestion, if it's been some time for you and your partner where you haven't really felt very intimately connected, I would say take a break from having sexual intimacy for a while, and just really focus on these energetic, emotional, sensual, and physical levels of intimacy for a good while, and really even just let the desire build up for the sexual intimacy, create some intentional space from the sexual intimacy and let these other aspects of connecting get really exercised and worked, and enjoy that together, because I think that once that's locked in again, then it just makes it easier for a woman to give herself sexually, especially if she's a woman that can, has holds herself at high regard, has high personal value and high self-respect. She's gonna need to feel that her partner is supporting her in these ways, in order for her to give herself sexually to her partner. She's gonna need to feel that they are showing up in this very solid way on these other levels of intimacy. So I would definitely suggest that before going back to these basics, having a verbal communication with your partner, something along the lines of, hey, I feel like there's an even deeper quality of intimacy I want to be experiencing in this connection, and even sexually, and I've come across this information recently that one way to do that is to kind of lay off the sexual intimacy and enjoy these other forms of intimacy for a little while and help strengthen those, and then come back around to the sexual intimacy after those have been tended to. And I just want to let you know I'm really interested in that, and I want to I want to practice that with you, and because I desire to feel a deeper quality of intimacy in our connection, and I'm noticing that I don't feel that connected to it right now, and I want to best support the health of our connection however I can, and I think that this is a good way to do it. And so I just want to let you know this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm feeling, and this is an action plan that I would like to do, and so that your partner, like, invite your partner into your process with you and let them know, because they're in this together with you, and ideally, and I'm sure your partner wants to support you in this because it affects them too, and ultimately your partner wants the happiest, most healthy, most alive, most sensual, juicy, available part of you, so, ideally your partner is involved in the process and they're on board, and you guys can look at this as a journey of self-discovery together, each of you to yourself first of all, and then each of you in context to the other, and use it as an opportunity to just keep growing, and it's not about anybody doing anything wrong. It's just the reality that long-term connections require maintenance, like everything does. Everything that expands over time, it requires maintenance and support and adaptability, because things change, times change, people change, needs change, wants change. It's like it's got to be able to continue morphing with the needs of the people inside the partnership. So I really want to first and foremost encourage a verbal communication, and create a special moment to invite your partner into this conversation so that they feel welcome and invited and encouraged to be hand in hand with you on the journey, and then maybe invite your partner to contribute to whatever degree they feel a desire to do. And maybe if you're the one that really if this is really coming from within you most, like maybe you're the one that kind of guides a little bit more, creating sacred space to have some really high quality dropped in moments together of just like sharing presence and connection. I have another video, I'll put the link in this video for you, but I have another video that I did of just walking a couple through what I call sensual play activities, as a way to connect energetically, in a really beautiful way that's very simple yet very effective. And so you can use that as like a example to be inspired by. But I definitely think that if the sexual intimacy is being challenged because there's not enough intimacy on these other layers to support the sexual intimacy to be like super deep and connected and fulfilling for everybody involved, then put that on pause for a bit, come back to the basics, really prioritize cultivating intimacy in these other ways, and let that desire for the sexual intimacy build. You know, I think there's a lot of value in the experience of wanting and not having, you know, that experience of anticipation of what's to come. You know, let that really build up, especially for domestic partnerships. I think it's really important because you're around each other so much that, you know, the novelty of being able to miss your sweetie, it's something you kind of actually have to build in to your routine, right? Because you're around each other all the time. So in order for that desire to be really stoked and to, you know, really move you into a place of wanting sexual intimacy, again, specifically for women, you need to be able to miss your sweetie. You need to be able to long for something that you're not getting in the moment, right? So that is my suggestion on, you know, really simple, basic ways to bring back the juice of the sexual connection, is to, once again, just really prioritize the quality of intimacy in these other dimensions of intimacy. You know, I just cannot say enough about the value of sharing energetic intimacy, just sharing simple presence with each other, and eye gazing and meditating and sharing breathing practices together. You know, even just sharing like where each one of you trades off, just giving each other like a 5-minute shoulder massage, you know, and doing all of this just for the sake of doing it, just for the sake of enjoying the experience itself. Don't do this with the idea in mind, like, oh, I'm gonna do this in order to get there, you know? Okay, I'll do this thing so that she's more comfortable to have sex with me later. Don't, you know, that's not what we're going for here. In fact, if you come with that approach, she's gonna feel that, and it's subtle, but that's a felt agenda. So do this, you know, take my advice in the way that feels good to you, and do it just for the sake of it alone, just for the sake of enjoying that degree of intimacy on its own, without needing to focus on like where it's gonna lead to, and enjoy it, and just let the sexual part, just let that be on hold for a bit. So whether that means just 1 week without having sex, maybe it means 2 weeks. I mean, the way I feel is like the longer you go, the greater that juicy energy will build, and will most likely result in a very mutually enjoyable sexual connection when it finally does happen. So I hope this is helpful for someone out there, and thank you so much for spending your time with me here. One more piece that I want to add to this topic about how to reestablish intimacy for couples that feel like it's been distant or strained is that if there's any unresolved issues in the connection that are creating blocks in communication, the connection, blocks in the physical and sensual and sexual intimacy, then that will definitely need to be addressed. And I really suggest creating some intentional space and time with your partner to communicate about these things and really be open and strong and brave around sharing what's truly on your heart regarding whatever the matter is, and hold space for them to fully be heard in their experience as well, and together come up with strategies of how to meet each other's needs in even greater ways. There's wonderful communication tools out there like Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg that can give tools for effective communication skills, especially specifically in conflict. I also am happy to be helpful in helping to create this intentional space between couples to help get clear on what their needs are and how to communicate about them, and how to also hold space in support of the other person doing the same for themselves. I think at the core of the couple is a desire to support each other, and sometimes people need some guidance into how to hold that space for each other, and even how to hold that space for themselves. So it's a big topic, and it is part of my work to help people connect to what's true for them, what their needs are, what their desires are, and to help figure out ways that those can be met in context of the partnership, and always first and foremost for a person to themselves. You know, this journey, even in relationship, this is always about, like, in a sense, like, it's always about like me to me before it's about me to this person. And it's all relative and it's all valid, but the me to me connection is super important, and to get clear on what that is and how that works and what that needs, and then be able to share that with the other person, and then receive from them what's true for them in these matters as well. So for whatever this is worth, I hope this is helpful. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, and to the best of my ability, I look forward to being supportive to you on your journey with this.